And before this video begins, I'd like to give a special shout out to my Asbantium level patron, Fallon Cortez. The early period of Tom Baker's time as the Fourth Doctor has often been described as gothic horror, with stories like The Pyramids of Mars, The Brain of Morbius and The Mask of Mandragora all taking very gothic approaches to scare young children across the UK. One of these young fans was Neil Cross, who grew up to become an accomplished writer. Much like a lot of writers, Cross was keen to contribute to his childhood show and make a horror episode of his very own, an opportunity which would present itself in the form of Series 7's Hyde. This unsettling tale follows the Doctor, Clara and two ghost hunters as they attempt to investigate the mysterious, chilling ghost of Caliburn House. Now, I'm personally an absolute wimp when it comes to horror films, but this episode is by far one of my favourites of Series 7, and even though you don't tend to hear a whole lot about it nowadays, it was pretty well received when it came out. But what makes it so good? And would I even go as far as to say that this is the best of Series 7B? Well, strap into your proton pack and prepare for some spooky scariness, because it's time to take a timey-wimey trip through the 2013 episode, Hyde. What's more classic in a horror tale than a haunted house? Creepy old mansions are one of the cornerstones of scary stories throughout human history. Therefore, Hyde immediately sets the tone and the atmosphere incredibly well, with eerie, foggy shots of an old house in the mist. It's very effective right from the beginning, and within the span of just 10 seconds, it tells you exactly what type of story this will be. Indeed, paranormal investigators Alec Palmer and Emma Graylin are investigating Caliburn House. I used to love watching those clearly staged ghost hunting shows on TV, and this opening has some very nice similarities to those. All the equipment set up on the table as they begin their session. All the vintage technology also helps establish the 1970s setting, since it's all very analog, without those fancy motion trackers, spirit boxes or strategically placed cameras. There's something lovably quaint and simple about it. However, it immediately gets serious once the ghost appears. Such an instantly chilling visual of the pale figure coming closer and closer. It always sends chills up my spine, seeing something so monstrous advancing with the delay of the camera. It's an incredibly well shot opening, instilling so much fear and sheer terror into the viewer. By the time the Doctor and Clara show up, there is no doubt that this is going to be a very intense and scary episode, so the cold open does its job perfectly. I do love that the Doctor has come here on purpose, instantly identifying the two fictional ghost hunters and explaining who they are and why they're so special. As fun as it can be for the Doctor and their companion to stumble into an adventure, it's always good to see them go somewhere with a clear goal. It's not until later that we discover the Doctor's true purpose, but having this establishing scene is a good way to set up the characters involved and provide the main two protagonists with a clear motivation. Obviously 11 is his usual whirlwind self here, bouncing around all over the place in a very fun and chaotic way. It reminds you that this is still Doctor Who. There's still fun to be had, it's not taking itself completely seriously, which is always appreciated.
It's ghost time.
Every ghost story needs a ghost. Obviously. Doctor Who has had a very long and complex history with the paranormal, almost always dismissing it with some sort of scientific explanation. Ghost zombies? They're just gaseous alien creatures. A werewolf? An alien. A vampire? A fish from space. Anytime the show sets something paranormal or supernatural up, it's immediately shot down. Well, with the exception of the Beast in the Impossible Planet. We still have no idea what the hell that actually was. The Caliburn Ghast is ultimately no different, eventually being revealed as time travel gone wrong. But I really love the initial setup. She's this mysterious entity who has been around for longer than the house's 400-year history, with all sorts of eerie, spooky tales circulating about past encounters. It feels very authentic and sincere, building up this entire history and world all with a few photos and snippets, just like the real ghost stories we get in our own world. It gives you the sense of more going on, which is perfect for a story with such a lengthy past. By tapping into so many cliches and familiar styles of stories, it makes everything about the ghost feel so very legitimate and believable, giving us something very specific to fear and a mystery to unravel. The Doctor enlists Clara's help to search for the ghost, and these kinds of scenes are the creepiest. The dark corridors and flickering lights really putting you on edge, especially because there are always glimpses of things in the shadows and figures passing just out of the character's view. It builds such an uneasy atmosphere, and I genuinely think it would have been absolutely perfect if they had these background statues disappear and reappear sometimes, implying weeping angels. It's the perfect setup for just a background Easter egg. They're literally standing there begging to be used as angels just to freak the audience out, and add to that feeling of a pit in your stomach as the characters explore such unfamiliar, hostile territory where danger could be lurking around any corner. The sound design is immaculately creepy, with the usual creaky floorboards and loud banging to further create the sense that the protagonists are definitely not alone. Clara carrying around the flickering candles is a sublime choice, creating such frantic, shifting lighting in every scene, reminding you of the mystery and chaos around them. We're all scared of the dark to some extent, whether we like to admit it or not. It's not the darkness itself we fear, but instead it's what might be hiding within it, using it as a shield to remain undetected. Probably one of the most common human fears is the fear of the unknown. That's why this lighting style works so well for the episode. You have the safe zones, which are fully lit with proper lighting and come across as very warm, but then there are these darker, unlit areas, where any semblance of safety goes out of the window and the characters feel in constant danger.
Do you feel like you're being watched?
One of the creepiest scenes comes as the house seems to become deathly cold, accompanied by the signature loud bangs that are tied to the ghost. On its own, it's an unsettling moment, because you can only begin to imagine what sort of entity is making this loud, angry banging. But the real reason it's so scary is when Clara asks the doctor to stop holding her hand, only for us to see the doctor has both hands out in the open. Some people could see this as comedy because of how the actors scream and run away like they're in Scooby-Doo, but I've always found it such an intensely unnerving and standout moment. To have that kind of realization would be terrifying. Initially thinking your friend is trying to comfort you, only to find out it's actually a completely different entity invading your personal space and possibly hunting you down. It's really chilling. This scene also gives us our first proper glimpse of the Crooked Man. And no, I'm not talking about the irredeemably bad movie of the same name. This one is actually good. Yes, this creature is one of the scariest in Doctor Who's history because of how it looks and how it's filmed. The body is all contorted in this unnatural way, immediately unsettling, especially with how it moves. All the movements were filmed in reverse and then edited to play forward, which makes it so inhuman and disturbing. It's just not right and immediately gives you the heebie-jeebies because it's unlike anything we can imagine. I love the photo of it, this blurry shape in a forest looking like something straight out of a creepypasta or an SCP. I think it's best summed up as unexplainable horror. It's so sinister and impossible you immediately can't help but fear it. Deep down in your soul you're conditioned to be terrified of it, and the mere visual of it is enough to trigger your fight or flight response. I also think the face of the Crooked Man is horrific, once again all distorted and barely even comprehensible. It works perfectly within the story the episode wants to tell, but we'll get back to that later on. Obsessed with the ghost, the Doctor decides to do some research of his own, heading back to the TARDIS. Which, when you really think about it, having a time machine during a ghost hunt is kinda cheating, isn't it? Indeed, the Doctor travels all through time taking photos, from the very beginning of the Earth to the very end, and all the weird stuff in between. This is a fantastic scene to really showcase the abilities of the TARDIS. We're told and shown all the time that it can travel through time, but this scene makes it so very real. It drives it home in such an impressive and eye-opening way, how so much changes despite the time machine itself staying in one exact place. I suppose it's kinda like that time machine episode in Futurama, where the characters get stuck in the machine and watch all of time unfolding from a single vantage point. It's very surreal and humbling to see, so I appreciate that the effect isn't lost on Clara and she gets very emotional and existential.
To you, I haven't been born yet. And to you, I've been dead 100 billion years.
I think we all tend to forget the realities of time travel in the Doctor Who universe. To the main character, it's all fun and games, able to frolic through time and space without a care in the world. But they've forgotten how that would feel to a mortal. It's like Rose in The End of the World, watching her home be destroyed. All she has ever known wiped out in the blink of an eye. To the Doctor, it's an event, but to Rose, it's a reminder of how small she is. Clara feels a similar way in this moment, realising just how finite her life is because everything ends. The Doctor is outside of time and behaves as such, without consequence almost. not accepting this fundamental truth and running from it. But humans like Clara can't do that. It's one of my favourite exchanges to come from this pairing. Clara summing the Doctor's life up in one simple sentence.
We're all ghosts to you.
Basically everyone the Doctor meets is already dead, which is incredibly existential when you really think about it. Obviously the scene also kind of has a double meaning because of Clara literally being a ghost of the Doctor after the previous two echoes, but as a commentary on the nature of the Doctor it's fantastic, and provides a whole new perspective on all the adventures. Similarly, there's a fantastic scene between the Doctor and Alec, with the latter reflecting on all the lives he took both directly and indirectly during World War II. It's a powerful moment for a number of reasons, because it actually fleshes out both characters involved. We really get to understand Alec's regret for everything he did in the name of duty, which fuels him to do what he does now, almost looking for penance by helping other lost souls find peace. He killed people and sent other people to die. Sure, he may have been involved in all these incredible schemes and inventive operations during the conflict, playing a key role in defeating the Axis, but once the war is over, you have to carry the burden of everything you did during it. It's not like you just revert back to normal once it's over. I would say there are a lot of similarities to the Doctor himself. This series once again subtly reminding you of Eleven's own past as a soldier in the Time War. It continues to build up to the reveal of the War Doctor in the finale, like in Cold War when Zukov recognised the Doctor as a soldier. This time we can see on the Doctor's face that he completely understands and shares the same feelings as Alec, knowing what all that guilt and regret feels like and the desperation to try and atone for it by helping others, almost as if you can even things out by doing it. Simple moments like these do an incredible job at subtly building this background up in preparation for it becoming a very important aspect of the show when the 50th anniversary rolls around. It's a very strong, underrated scene that both provides Alec with a sympathetic backstory and further reintroduces the Doctor's own Time War history, something also hinted at by Emma herself, warning Clara about him.
Don't trust him. There's a sliver of ice in his heart.
Emma is a medium, someone able to connect with spirits and communicate with them across the boundary between our world and the afterlife. These are debatably a real thing in our world, although your mileage will obviously vary based on how skeptical you are. But Doctor Who doesn't have that limitation because psychic abilities have long been established within the show's universe. Emma is an empath, she can feel other people's emotions and tap into their very feelings. I like how this is implemented in the episode. The Doctor explains how brave and painful it is for someone like this to willingly expose themselves to so many strong negative emotions, which helps you as a viewer understand the significance of Emma's job and abilities. It's not simple and it's something that needs to be pointed out and respected. Her empathic abilities are also tied directly into her romantic tension with Alec, which builds throughout the episode. The credit for this character work mainly falls to the two actors. Writer Neil Cross himself admitted that he found it difficult to fully explore the complex history of the pair in writing. So it's the acting of Jessica Raine and Doug Ray Scott that really brings them to life. There's a great scene as Alec reflects on how his experiences as an elite espionage agent have caused him to lie a lot about himself. It's initially framed as him psychoanalyzing the Doctor, but it's clear that he's trying to justify and explain his own lies about the war and how he feels about Emma. It's these small moments that help get you invested in the pairing, because they have a very slow burn character journey together. It's a bit of a will they won't they situation, adding a nice B-plot to the narrative, as they continually get close to making progress, only to get distracted or shy away from taking the risk. They're very clearly into each other and want to initiate, they just both have their own reasons and fears preventing them from doing so it sets up the whole love aspect of the episode really strongly. I appreciate Clara questioning why Emma doesn't initiate, since being an empath would mean she would already know Alec's feelings about her. However, Emma admits that conveniently, sometimes people with her abilities get the wrong readings because of what they want someone else to feel. It's another good way to bring a sense of tragedy into her powers. So I guess you could say, she's not a happy medium. The mystery of the ghost deepens as a random black disc shows up, heralding the most intense appearance yet, complete with a spooky message seared into the wall. Scenes like these help to ramp up the tension, upping the ante and building the episode up to its eventual crescendo. It doesn't just sit in a holding pattern, it's constantly adding to itself with new encounters and terrifying shots like this one. This particular shot always gets me because of just how close the ghost is without Alec or Emma knowing. She's literally right right behind them, and that always gives me bigger goosebumps than any other moment in this episode. It capitalizes on the brief illumination of lightning, almost like a purely visual jump scare. It doesn't go over the top like modern horror usually does and blare loud noises in your face to go, ooh, jump now, you're scared. It's just a shocking visual, and it works perfectly to terrorize you and shake you to your core. However, then the Doctor returns to the house and the show does what it always does.
She's not a ghost.
Obviously it's a bit annoying that they immediately dismiss all of the cool ghostliness from earlier, but I do think the scientific explanation is acceptable as well. Rather than being a spirit, the ghost is actually just a woman trapped in time, things moving slower for her than for the rest of the universe, which is why she's always seemingly stuck in the exact same position. It's a very sci-fi concept, and it's surprising that this wasn't written by Moffat, because I could definitely imagine him coming up with this idea. Hilda crash landed in a pocket universe 3 minutes ago from her perspective, despite showing up for hundreds of thousands of years from Earth's perspective. It's very timey-wimey. I think the Doctor explains it really well, in a way that feels rewarding and engaging, rather than the twist acting like an adult stomping on a kid's sandcastle, throwing their ice cream on the ground, and just ruining their fun in general. Now that they know what's going on with the ghost, it's up to Emma to act like a tether to bring Hilda back from the other dimension, with the Doctor jumping through the wormhole all strapped up. Even though the episode has taken a hard turn down science lane and dropped the paranormal aspect, this scene still has an intense build up, so I appreciate how all the previous work isn't immediately thrown out of the window. Indeed, once the Doctor is in the pocket dimension, there's a whole new layer of creepiness, as he finds himself stalked by the Crooked Man. We can actually thank Moffat for this incredibly chilling location. Originally, Cross had set the entire story inside and around Caliburn House itself, trying to work on a low budget. Even the scenes in the pocket dimension would have taken place in the house. I guess it would have been similar to Stranger Things is Upside Down. However, Moffat wanted to relocate the other dimension to an eerie forest, and this creates such a brilliant effect. It's so quiet and unsettling. The Doctor just knows he has to get to Hilda and escape. It's such a disorienting sequence. The chaos inside Caliburn perfectly contrasted by the uneasy events in the cold, dark pocket universe. And despite rescuing Hilda, the Doctor finds himself trapped in a rapidly shrinking universe, and he's not alone. The TARDIS's cloister bells chiming in here adds the ideal level of tension and drama because it's always been established as one of the most catastrophic sounds to hear, the single defining noise declaring hopelessness and doom. And to make things even worse, Clara can't even get into the TARDIS. The Rings of Akaton, Neil Cross's other episode in the series, established the idea that the TARDIS itself doesn't like Clara, and it once again comes up in this episode, with the new companion struggling to ingratiate herself and instead only making things worse. It also ends up tying into the Clara and the TARDIS minisode, which Moffat pretty much only wrote so he could imply Clara self-cessed. No, I'm not joking.
You think you've got problems? We've got to share a bed.
Oh dear God.
However, Clara's loyalty and sheer desperation to help rescue the Doctor seems to win over the time and space machine. The TARDIS will die within 10 seconds of being inside the pocket universe, but it's willing to make that sacrifice because of how important the Doctor is. We can't forget all the excellent work the Doctor's wife did to characterise the vehicle itself and make moments like these so believable, because we know the TARDIS has its own feelings and emotions. Inspired by the support of Alec, Emma is able to re-establish the link, allowing the TARDIS to slip into the pocket universe and rescue the Doctor. But before he can leave, Eleven once again has to confront the Crooked Man, well and truly terrifying this 1,000-year-old Time Lord who has pretty much seen all there is to see. So you can tell the thing really radiates evil energy. I love when episodes like these raise the stakes so dramatically by having the Doctor scared. It's something we see so rarely that it makes it incredibly effective when it does happen. He has no TARDIS and doesn't know what he's dealing with, so it is truly terrifying. Originally, this monster was actually going to be the Lost Lord, a Gallifreyan boogeyman. The Lost Lord would have been a Time Lord imprisoned inside an otherworldly dimension called the Hex, and is now tempting the Doctor inside so he can feed on the protagonist and return to the universe to absorb all of time itself. So, you know, the usual then. I'm really glad this wasn't what we ended up getting. Don't get me wrong, I love Time Lords in the modern era and I adore the idea of such an extremely corrupted and mythical member of the race, but it would have been way too overly complicated and self-indulgent, losing sight of the simplicity of the ghost story by adding all these crazy ideas about Time Lord mythology. It was unnecessary. The Crooked Man, however, works a lot better, because there is no explanation. It's just this creepy entity lurking in the darkness without a name or a species. We don't know anything about it, so it has the similar power of monsters like the Midnight Entity, where the less we know, the better. Because, like I said, we all have that fear of the unknown. Dawn finally breaks as the Doctor returns to our world, only to have a very interesting conversation with Emma. It was clear at the beginning that the Doctor came here on purpose, but we never knew why until this scene at the very end. It's similar to the Rebel Flesh in Series 6, 11 being a lot more manipulative than he lets on by feigning an innocent adventure when he actually has his own motivations and agenda. Indeed, he came for the express reason of using Emma's power to find out who Clara is. The Doctor is still very obsessed with trying to uncover this mystery of the Impossible Girl. We've already seen him time stalk her by watching her grow up, but it's clear he just can't accept the fact that she's a normal person. Even when Clara herself begged for him to treat her as her own person, he clearly can't let it go.
You are the only mystery worth solving.
No matter how much Emma insists Clara is normal and has nothing to hide, the Doctor won't accept it, which is even more proof that the whole Impossible Girl storyline is a flaw in the Doctor's character, rather than it being a flaw or weakness in Clara's character. She is just a regular woman, something Emma explains, but the nature of the previous echoes is too much of a mystery for the Doctor.
Why? Is that not enough?
It's a fantastic scene presenting the darker side of him, showcasing his obsessive insistence that he has to be vindicated because he thinks he's right. He will never see Clara as her own person, and that's the true Impossible Girl arc. Something this scene perfectly displays and explains, but still people just don't get it. The biggest twist in the episode is that it isn't a ghost story, or even an alien invasion monster story. It's just a love story. Yes, Hilda is revealed as the distant descendant of Emma and Alec, which in turn leads the Doctor to realise that the Crooked Man wasn't actually evil. He's just a misunderstood Romeo separated from his Juliet. At least this one is hopefully of age, whatever the age of consent for weird, creepy, crooked monsters is, and it's not like the real Romeo and Juliet. But let's not open that Shakespearean illegal can of worms. If this whole aspect of the episode feels tacked onto the ending, that's because it almost literally is. It was a very late addition to the story, with Moffat worried that the Crooked Man was too shallow and needed depth. So he asked Cross to add another in order to mirror the love plot between Emma and Alec. Sure, the themes of love and separation were already there in the story, but this seems like a needless quirk because it's quite underdeveloped. I do like the idea of a monster so ugly and horrifying we immediately write it off and assume it's evil, when it actually just turns out to be a simple romantic. But it feels like such an afterthought in the narrative itself. We don't even get to see them reunited, the episode just cuts off. It would have been annoying for there to have been no explanation of the Crooked Man at all, no reason why it was there, but it could have easily been explained without shoehorning in this sudden last minute twist, which never gets a chance to breathe. I think it's a bit of a weak and rushed ending to an otherwise great episode.
Well, hello again, you old Romeo, you.
Hyde is a phenomenally underrated episode of Doctor Who. Nobody ever really talks about it anymore, and that's a real shame. The atmosphere of the story is so intense and scary, it truly feels like a Doctor Who horror movie. On a technical level, it's a masterpiece, with super sound design and excellent cinematography and directing. There's an incredible tone to the story that perfectly keeps you on the edge of your seat when you're not hiding behind a sofa. It's so small scale that everything hits so much harder. There are only 3 supporting characters, so both Alec and Emma get plenty of time to flesh out their characters and their backstories, building up their relationship relationship very effectively. I also love how it explores the Doctor and Clara's relationship, with Clara challenging him on how he treats time travel, and we also get to see the continuation of his obsessive search for answers. Hyde is paced excellently, remaining a gripping ghost story throughout the first half, upping the ante with more and more creepiness before it gives way to a slick and exciting sci-fi tale racing against time. Hyde easily earns an A rank on the Series 7B tier list. And geez, it's really starting to get crowded up there. I just adore this episode so much. It really freaks me out with a lot of spookiness throughout. The main drawback is the tacked on ending with the Crooked Man love story. It works with the themes of the narrative, but it just feels a bit unsatisfying. Although I absolutely adore the design of the monster, it's extremely unsettling to look at and watch move around. All the settings are beautiful and contribute to the overall tone, so as a whole, Hyde is probably the best episode of Series 7B, but it's pretty much downhill from here. Welp. And I'd like to give an extra special thank you to my Asbantium level patron, Fallon Cortez, my Diamond level patron, Valtar, my Platinum level patron, Maximilian Foreman, and all my Gold level patrons, Calvin, Daniel Shillito, Franz Horn aka Line Vortex, Golg Nogler, Herna Versog, and Luke_SY. Thank you so much for your support.